The bell above the door of Sunrise Cafe in San Antonio, Texas, chimed softly as a man in worn jeans and a faded baseball cap walked in. Nobody looked twice at him. That was the point. Rafael Rafe Moreno owned half the legitimate businesses in San Antonio, and all the illegitimate ones. He controlled an empire worth hundreds of millions, built on fear, loyalty, and carefully calculated moves that kept federal agents chasing shadows. Politicians answered his calls. Rivals disappeared when they crossed him. His name alone could empty a room or fill a bank account. But today, he was just another customer in a cafe he'd bought 6 months ago as part of his legitimate business portfolio. A front, a tax write-off, a place he'd never actually visited until now. He wanted to see how his investment was running, wanted to see if his manager was skimming profits, wanted to walk through unnoticed and observe. So, he dressed like a construction worker on lunch break and slid into a corner booth, pulling the brim of his cap low. The cafe was small but clean, exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture that somehow worked, the smell of fresh coffee and something baking. A few regulars sat scattered around, lost in laptops and conversations. Soft music played overhead. Normal, safe, boring, exactly what he'd designed it to be. A waitress approached his table, notepad in hand. She looked tired, the kind of tired that came from double shifts and bills that never stopped coming. Mid-20s, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, eyes that had seen struggle but still held kindness. She wore a name tag that read, Lila. "Welcome to Sunrise," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What can I get you?" Rafe glanced at the menu without really reading it. Burger, fries, coffee, black. "Coming right up." She started to turn away. Then a little voice called out from the kitchen doorway. "Mama, Mama, I finished my homework." Rafe looked up. A small boy, maybe 5 years old, stood there holding a cratered workbook, his face lit up with pride. He wore clothes that were clean but too small, shoes with scuffed toes, and a smile that could melt glaciers. Lila's entire expression transformed when she saw him. The exhaustion melted. The forced smile became real. "That's wonderful, baby," she said softly. "Go sit back down. I'll check it when I'm on break, okay?" The boy nodded and disappeared back into the kitchen. Lila turned back to Rafe, her professional mask sliding back into place. But something in her eyes had shifted, something vulnerable, something fierce. "Sorry about that," she said quietly. "Childcare fell through today. My manager's letting me keep him in the back." Rafe nodded, saying nothing. Lila walked away to place his order, but Rafe couldn't stop watching her. The way she moved, efficient, careful, like someone who couldn't afford to make mistakes. The way she smiled at other customers even though her shoulders sagged with exhaustion. The way she kept glancing toward the kitchen, checking on her son. And then, as she passed his table again, carrying a coffee pot to refill another customer's cup, he heard her whisper something under her breath. 3 words, barely audible, not meant for anyone else to hear. "Please, just survive." Rafe's hand froze halfway to his water glass. Those 3 words, spoken like a prayer, like a mantra, like the only thing keeping her standing, hit him like a bullet to the chest. He knew that prayer. He'd said it himself once, a lifetime ago. And hearing it now, from this exhausted single mother in his own cafe, stopped his entire world. Welcome back, my wonderful friends. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Thank you for support. If you love what we do here, take a moment to hit the subscribe button, like, share, and let's make this video go viral. Where are you watching from, and what time is it over there? It makes me connect better with you, and if you believe kindness can come from the most unexpected places, stay until the end. You won't believe what happens next. And if you believe that 3 words can change 2 lives forever, stay until the very end. Lila Martinez had learned to survive on 3 hours of sleep and prayers. She'd been doing it for 5 years, ever since the day she found out she was pregnant, and the father of her child decided that fatherhood looked better in the rearview mirror. He left her with $17, half a tank of gas, and a choice: keep the baby or keep her pride. She chose the baby, and she'd been choosing him every single day since. Now, at 26, Lila worked 2 jobs, mornings at Sunrise Cafe and evenings cleaning office buildings downtown. Her son, Cameron, was her entire world. Every tip she earned, every extra shift she picked up, every moment of exhaustion. It was all for him. But lately, surviving had become harder. The rent had gone up, again. Her car needed repairs she couldn't afford. Cameron needed new shoes, a winter coat, and, God help her, the school was asking for money for a field trip she knew she couldn't provide. So, she whispered those 3 words to herself, multiple times a day, like a lifeline she was afraid to let go of. Please, just survive. Just make it through today. Then tomorrow. Then the day after that. But survival was getting heavier, and Lila wasn't sure how much longer she could carry the weight. Rafe watched her work for the next 30 minutes. She moved with practiced efficiency, taking orders, refilling coffee, clearing tables, all while periodically checking on Cameron through the kitchen window. The boy sat at a small table in the back, surrounded by crayons and coloring books, completely absorbed in his own little world. Other customers barely noticed her. She was background noise, invisible labor, and just another waitress doing her job. But Rafe saw everything. He saw the way she smiled even when a customer was rude, the way she apologized when someone complained about wait times that weren't her fault, the way she pocketed tips with quiet gratitude, tucking them into her apron like they were lifelines. He also saw the way her hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was looking, the way she closed her eyes for just a second when she passed the kitchen, as if gathering strength, the way she bit her lip when Cameron called out, "Mama, I'm hungry," and she had to tell him, "Just a little longer, baby." She was drowning, and no one around her even noticed. When his food arrived, Lila set it down with the same tired smile. "Anything else I can get you?" Rafe looked up at her, really looked at her. "How long have you been working here?" She seemed surprised by the question. "About 8 months. Why?" "You seem good at your job." A flicker of something, pride maybe, crossed her face. "I try. Tips pay the bills." "You got family in San Antonio?" Lila's smile faded slightly. "Just me and my son." Her tone was polite but guarded. She'd learned long ago not to share too much with strangers. "Enjoy your meal." She turned to leave. "Wait," Rafe said. She paused, looking back at him with cautious curiosity. Rafe pulled out his wallet and placed a $100 bill on the table. "For the burger." Lila stared at the money, her eyes widening. "Sir, the meal is $12. I can't—" "Keep the change," Rafe said simply. That's too much. I can't accept—" "You already said tips pay the bills," Rafe interrupted gently. "So, let it pay some bills." Lila's eyes filled with tears. She blinked away quickly. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means." But Rafe did know. He knew exactly what $88 could mean to someone living on the edge. He'd been that person once. After Lila walked away, clutching the money like it was gold, Rafe pulled out his phone and sent a text to his manager, a man named Vincent who ran the cafe's day-to-day operations. "Tell me about the waitress, Lila Martinez." Vincent's response came quickly. "Good worker, never late, never complains, keeps to herself." "Why? Just curious." "How much are we paying her? Minimum wage plus tips." "Standard." Rafe's jaw tightened. He owned this place. He'd signed off on the business model, the budget, the staffing. And he'd never once thought about the people working here as anything other than line items on a spreadsheet. Give her a raise, effective immediately, $2 above minimum. Boss, that's going to do it. And find out if she needs anything. Child care, benefits, whatever. Handle it quietly. Understood. Rafe put his phone away and finished his burger, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about those 3 words. Please, just survive. He'd built an empire by being ruthless, by making hard choices, by never letting emotion cloud his judgment. Weakness got you killed in his world. Sentiment got you betrayed. But something about Lila, about the way she fought so hard for her son, the way she smiled through exhaustion, the way she whispered prayers no one else could hear, reminded him of someone, his mother. Rafe's mother had been a waitress too, single mom, 2 jobs, barely scraping by in a neighborhood where survival was a daily gamble. She'd whispered prayers just like Lila's, worked herself to exhaustion just like Lila did. sacrificed everything for her son. And she died when Rafe was 16, collapsed from exhaustion in the middle of a shift, a heart that had been working too hard for too long, finally giving out. Rafe had promised himself 2 things at her funeral. 1, he'd never be powerless again. 2, he'd never let anyone work themselves to death the way she had. He'd kept the first promise by building an empire. He'd forgotten the second one until today. As Rafe stood to leave, Cameron burst out of the kitchen, running toward his mother with a drawing clutched in his small hands. "Mama, look! I drew us!" Lila knelt down, taking the drawing with reverence. It showed 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a yellow sun. The word family was scrawled across the top in uneven letters. "It's beautiful, baby," Lila said, her voice thick with emotion. "That's you and me," Cameron explained seriously. "Together forever, because we're a team. We are," Lila whispered, hugging him tight, "the best team." Rafe watched from the doorway, something tightening in his chest. This woman was raising a good kid on nothing but love and willpower, and she was doing it alone. That wasn't right. He walked out of Sunrise Cafe with a decision already forming in his mind. That evening, Rafe sat in his office, a penthouse overlooking downtown San Antonio, where decisions that shaped the city's underworld were made over expensive whiskey and calculated threats. His lieutenant, a sharp-eyed woman named Isabel, sat across from him, reviewing reports. "The cafe's clean," Isabel said. "No skimming. Vincent's running it exactly as projected. Moderate profits. Good cover." "I want to expand it," Rafe said suddenly. Isabel looked up, surprised. "Expand? Boss, it's a small cafe, barely worth the attention." "Make it worth the attention," Rafe said. "Upgrade the space, improve the wages, offer benefits, childcare options. Make it the kind of place people actually want to work. That's going to cut into profits significantly." "I don't care." Isabel studied him with the careful attention of someone who'd worked for Rafe long enough to know when to push and when to stay silent. "This is about the waitress, isn't it? Lila Martinez." Rafe's expression didn't change. "Run a background check, quietly. I want to know everything, her situation, her debts, what she needs. And then, Rafe said, swirling his whiskey, "we make sure she doesn't have to whisper survival prayers. Anymore." Isabel nodded slowly. "You're playing a dangerous game, boss. Getting personally involved." "I'm not involved," Rafe interrupted. "I'm investing. There's a difference." But they both knew it was a lie. Rafe hadn't been able to stop thinking about Lila since he walked out of that cafe. And that was a problem, because in his world, caring about someone made them a target, and he'd just put a target on a single mother and her 5-year-old son. Lila thought the $100 tip was a one-time miracle. She was wrong. Over the next 2 weeks, the man in the baseball cap, she never caught his name, came back 3 more times. Always alone, always quiet, always ordering the same thing: burger, fries, black coffee, and always leaving tips that made her hands shake. $50, $75, once, $120, with a note that simply said, "For Cameron's field trip." Lila didn't know how he knew about the field trip. She'd never mentioned it, but the money was enough to cover the cost and buy Cameron the new shoes he desperately needed. She wanted to ask questions, wanted to understand why this stranger kept helping her. But every time she tried, he'd just nod, finish his coffee, and leave before she could form the words. It felt like a dream. And Lila had learned long ago that dreams didn't last. What Lila didn't know was that Rafe had done far more than leave generous tips. Isabel's background check had revealed everything. Lila was 3 months behind on rent. Her car had a cracked transmission that would cost more to fix than the vehicle was worth. She had medical debt from Cameron's birth that she'd been paying off in $10 increments for 5 years. Her credit was destroyed. She had no family, no support system, no safety net. She was one emergency away from homelessness. Rafe had fixed some of it quietly. An anonymous donor paid off 2 months of her rent. Her landlord received a call from a community assistance program offering to cover repairs on several units, including hers. The medical debt mysteriously disappeared from collections, marked paid in full by an unnamed third party. Lila had no idea any of this was happening, and Rafe intended to keep it that way. "You're getting sloppy," Isabel warned him one evening as they reviewed accounts. "You've funneled over $15,000 into this woman's life in 2 weeks. People are going to notice." "Let them," Rafe said. "Boss, you've built your entire empire on staying invisible, on never showing weakness. And now you're—" "I'm helping one person," Rafe interrupted coldly. "That's not weakness. That's a choice." Isabel fell silent, but her expression said everything. This is how empires fall, one choice at a time. But Rafe couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Because every time he saw Lila smile at her son, every time he watched her push through exhaustion with grace, he saw his mother. And he couldn't save his mother. But maybe, just maybe, he could save Lila. Then everything shifted. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Vincent, the cafe manager, called Rafe in a panic. "Boss, we have a problem." Rafe's voice was ice. "What kind of problem?" "City inspectors just showed up, unannounced. They're tearing the place apart. Health code violations, occupancy issues, permits they claim are expired. It's a shakedown." Rafe's jaw clenched. "Who sent them?" "I don't know, but they're threatening to shut us down. Today." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't let them close anything until I arrive." He hung up and looked at Isabel. "Someone's testing me. Find out who." When Rafe arrived at Sunrise Cafe, the place was in chaos. 3 city inspectors wearing official badges crawled through every corner, clipboards in hand, writing violations for things that didn't exist. Customers had been cleared out. Vincent looked ready to murder someone. And Lila stood behind the counter, holding Cameron's hand, her face pale with fear. "What's going on?" she asked when she saw Rafe walk in. "They're saying we might close. I can't lose this job. I can't—" "You won't," Rafe said quietly. Then, louder to the inspectors. "Who's in charge here?" A man in his 50s with a smug expression turned around. "And you are?" "The owner," Rafe said simply. The man's smugness faltered, just slightly. "Mr. Moreno, I didn't realize—" "You didn't realize a lot of things," Rafe interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous softness. "Like the fact that this cafe passed a full inspection 3 weeks ago, or that every permit is current and on file downtown, or that you're here because someone paid you to harass my business." The inspector's face went red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Who sent you?" Rafe asked. "And don't insult me by lying. I know exactly how this city works. Someone wanted to send me a message." "Who?" The man glanced at his colleagues nervously. "Look, we're just doing our jobs." Rafe pulled out his phone and made a call. It rang twice. "Councilman Brooks," Rafe said smoothly when the call connected. "I have 3 city inspectors at my cafe threatening closure based on fabricated violations. I'm wondering if you might know anything about that." There was a pause on the other end. Then, "Mr. Moreno, I assure you, I have no idea." "Then let me educate you," Rafe said, his tone colder than winter. "Every campaign donation you've received in the last 4 years, I can trace them. Every contract you've awarded to your brother-in-law's construction company, I have documentation. Every closed-door deal you thought was private, I know about it." Another pause. Longer this time. "Now," Rafe continued, "you're going to call off your inspectors. You're going to apologize for the confusion, and you're going to make sure nothing like this happens again. Because if it does, all of that information I just mentioned, it goes to the press and the FBI. Understand?" "Understood," the councilman said quietly. Rafe hung up and looked at the lead inspector. "You have 30 seconds to leave my property before I have you arrested for harassment and extortion." The inspectors scrambled for the door. After they left, silence filled the cafe. Vincent exhaled shakily. "Boss, that was—" "Handle cleanup," Rafe said. "We reopen in an hour." Then he turned to Lila, who stood frozen, still holding Cameron's hand. "Are you okay?" Rafe asked. "You're the owner?" Lila whispered. Rafe realized his mistake immediately. He'd blown his cover, revealed himself. "Yes," he said simply. Lila's expression shifted through confusion, shock, and something else he couldn't read. "Why didn't you tell me? All those tips, those visits, you were checking on your investment?" "No," Rafe said. "I was checking on you." "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would someone like you care about someone like me?" Rafe wanted to tell her the truth, wanted to say, "Because you remind me of my mother, because you're fighting a battle no one should fight alone, Because I heard you whisper a prayer, I used to pray. Instead, he said, because everyone deserves someone in their corner. Tears spilled down Lila's cheeks. Cameron tugged on her hand. Mama, why are you crying? Happy tears, baby, Lila whispered. Just happy tears. That night, after the cafe reopened and customers returned and normalcy resumed, Lila found an envelope in her locker. Inside was a letter, typed anonymous. You've been given a raise. 15-hour. Health insurance starts next month. Child care assistance is available if needed. You don't have to survive anymore, Lila. You can live. A friend Lila read it 3 times, her hands trembling. She didn't know who this friend was, but she was starting to suspect. Meanwhile, Isabel sat across from Rafe in his office, her expression grim. I found out who sent the inspectors, she said. Santiago Vega. Rafe's entire body went still. Santiago Vega was a rival, a smaller operation trying to expand into Rafe's territory. Aggressive, reckless, dangerous. He's testing you, Isabel continued, seeing if you're distracted, if you've gotten soft. The cafe was just the beginning. He's going to keep pushing. Then I'll push back, Rafe said coldly. Boss, if he finds out about Lila, if he realizes she means something to you, he won't, Rafe interrupted. But Isabel's look said it all. It's already too late. You've shown your hand, and now she's a target. 2 days later, Lila was closing the cafe alone. Vincent had left early, and she'd volunteered to lock up for extra hours. Cameron sat in the back, half asleep, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Lila was wiping down tables when the front door opened. She looked up, expecting a late customer. Instead, 2 men walked in. Big men, men who didn't look like they were there for coffee. We're closed, Lila said, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. The taller one smiled, cold, predatory. We're not here for food, sweetheart. We're here to deliver a message. What message? To your boss, the man said. Tell Rafael Moreno that Santiago Vega says hello, and that he should be more careful about the things he cares about. The second man pulled out a lighter and flicked it open, the flame dancing in the dim cafe light. Nice place, he said casually. Be a shame if something happened to it. Lila's blood turned to ice. Lila's hands curled into fists at her sides, her fear transforming into something fiercer. Get out, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Now, the men laughed. Or what? The taller one asked, taking a step closer. You gonna call the cops? By the time they get here, this place could be... She won't need to call anyone. The voice came from the doorway. Rafe stood there, his expression carved from stone, flanked by 2 men who looked like they ate bullets for breakfast. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The intruder's smug expressions faltered. Moreno, the taller one said, trying to recover his bravado. We were just leaving. No, Rafe said quietly, stepping into the cafe. You were just threatening a woman and a child. In my establishment, on my property. He moved with predatory grace, closing the distance between them. That was a mistake. Santiago just wanted to... I don't care what Santiago wants, Rafe interrupted, his voice soft but lethal. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to tell Santiago that if he ever, and I mean ever, comes near this cafe, near Lila, near her son again, I will erase him from existence. Not quickly, not cleanly. Do you understand? The men nodded quickly, all bravado gone. Good. Now get out of my sight. They practically ran for the door. After they left, silence filled the cafe. Rafe's men positioned themselves outside, standing guard. Rafe turned to Lila, his expression softening. Are you hurt? No, Lila said, but her voice shook. But Cameron... She ran to the back room. Cameron was exactly where she'd left him, curled up on the small couch, still half asleep, completely oblivious to the danger that had just walked through the door. Lila collapsed beside him, pulling him close, her whole body trembling with relief and terror. Rafe watched from the doorway, something tightening in his chest. You need to leave, Rafe said quietly after Lila had collected herself, and Cameron was safely buckled into her car, one of Rafe's men assigned to follow them home. Tonight, pack what you need. I'll arrange a place for you, somewhere safe. Safe from what? Lila demanded. She stood in the parking lot, arms crossed, exhaustion and anger battling across her face. What the hell is going on? Who were those men? And why did they mention you by name? Rafe was silent for a long moment. I'm not just a businessman, Lila, he finally said. I own legitimate operations, the cafe, real estate, investments, but I also control other things that exist in shadows, and I have enemies because of it. Lila stared at him. You're telling me you're a criminal? Yes. And those men came here because of you? Yes. So by helping me, by paying my rent, by leaving those tips, by fixing things in my life, you painted a target on my back. Her voice rose with each word. You made me and my son vulnerable because you wanted to play hero? The accusation hit Rafe like a physical blow. I was trying to help, he said quietly. Well, congratulations, Lila said bitterly. You've helped us right into danger. Cameron could have been hurt tonight because of you. I won't let that happen, Rafe said firmly. I'll protect you, both of you, whatever it takes. I don't want your protection. Lila's voice cracked. I want my son to be safe. I want to go back to the life where we were struggling, but at least we weren't being threatened by criminals. That life was killing you, Rafe said, his voice sharper than he intended. You were drowning, Lila, working yourself to death just like... He stopped himself. Just like what? Lila asked, her anger shifting to confusion. Rafe looked away. My mother. She was a single mom, waitress, 2 jobs. She worked herself into an early grave because no one helped her, because no one saw her. And when I heard you whisper those 3 words, please just survive, I heard her voice. And I couldn't... His voice broke. I couldn't let history repeat itself. Lila's anger dissolved into something softer, more complicated. So this isn't about me, she said quietly. This is about your mother. No, Rafe said, meeting her eyes. It started because of my mother, but it became about you, about Cameron, about 2 people who deserved better than what life was giving them. He stepped closer. I'm not a good man, Lila. I've done terrible things. I've hurt people. But helping you, protecting you, that's the first good thing I've done in years. And I'm not going to stop just because it got complicated. Lila studied him, this dangerous, powerful man who'd inserted himself into her life, who'd saved her from poverty and simultaneously endangered her, who looked at her son like he mattered. What happens now? She asked. Now you let me keep you safe until I handle Santiago, Rafe said. There's a house, quiet neighborhood, security. You and Cameron stay there until this is over. And then you decide, Rafe said simply. If you want to come back to the cafe, come back. If you want to disappear and never see me again, I'll make that happen too. I'll set you up with enough money to start over somewhere safe. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. Lila wanted to say no, wanted to run, wanted to protect Cameron from this world, but she also knew she had no other options. And part of her, a part she didn't want to examine too closely, didn't want to run from Rafe. Okay, she said finally, but I have conditions. Name them. Cameron doesn't know any of this. As far as he's concerned, we're just staying at a friend's house for a little while, and you stay away unless absolutely necessary. I don't want him getting attached to you if this is temporary. Something flickered across Rafe's face. Disappointment, maybe. But he nodded. Agreed. The safe house was in a gated community 20 minutes outside San Antonio. 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a swing set, and armed security disguised as landscapers and maintenance workers. Cameron thought it was a vacation. Mama, can we stay here forever? He asked, bouncing on the king-size bed in his new room. It's so big, and there's a pool. Just for a little while, baby, Lila said, forcing a smile. But that night, after Cameron fell asleep, Lila stood at the window, watching the guards patrol the perimeter, and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You and Cameron are safe, I promise. Sleep well. Our Lila stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, Why are you really doing this? The response came quickly. Because some people are worth saving, and you're one of them. Meanwhile, across the city, Rafe sat in a warehouse with Isabel and 6 of his most trusted men. Santiago's made his move, Rafe said. Now we make ours. I want every one of his operations identified, every contact, every weakness. We're going to dismantle him piece by piece. Boss, if we go to war, the feds will notice, Isabel warned. They've been watching you for months. This could give them the excuse they need to move in. Then we move faster than they can respond, Rafe said coldly. Santiago threatened a woman and a child under my protection. That's not business. That's personal. And personal debts get paid in blood. His men nodded, understanding the unspoken order. Santiago Vega had signed his death warrant the moment he walked into that cafe. But Santiago wasn't sitting idle either. In a different part of the city, he sat in his own office, smoking a cigar, looking at photos spread across his desk. Photos of Lila, of Cameron, of the safe house. So, Moreno's got himself a weakness, Santiago said, smiling. A pretty little waitress and her kid. How touching. His lieutenant shifted uncomfortably. Boss, if we go after them, Moreno will do exactly what I want him to do, Santiago interrupted. He'll be so focused on protecting them that he won't see the real move coming. He tapped ash from his cigar. The woman and the kid? They're not the target. They're the distraction. Then what's the target? Santiago's smile widened. Everything. While Moreno's playing bodyguard, we take over his operations, his territory, his connections. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. He looked at the photo of Lila one more time. Such a shame, he said. She's pretty, but in this business, pretty things get broken. 3 days passed in the safe house like a strange dream. Cameron loved it. The backyard, the pool, the giant TV with every cartoon channel imaginable. He asked every morning if they could stay just one more day, and Lila's heart broke a little more each time she said yes, because she knew this wasn't real life. This was borrowed time in a borrowed house, courtesy of a man who lived in shadows and violence. But God help her, she was starting to feel safe. Rafe kept his distance, as promised, but every morning there was fresh coffee waiting on the kitchen counter. Every evening groceries appeared, exactly the brands Cameron liked, and every night that same text, "You're safe, sleep well." Our Lila told herself she shouldn't respond, told herself she was just a project to him, a way to ease guilt about his mother. But on the fourth night, she texted back, "Cameron asked about you today. Wanted to know when the nice man from the cafe was coming to visit." The response came immediately. "What did you tell him? That you're busy. He said to tell you he misses you." There was a long pause before the next message. "I miss him too. Both of you." Lila stared at those words for 20 minutes before finally turning off her phone. But while Lila and Cameron existed in their temporary paradise, Rafe's world was crumbling. Santiago had been busy. 2 of Rafe's supply routes had been hit in the last 48 hours. One of his warehouses burned to the ground. 3 of his street-level operators disappeared, either bought off or buried. Rafe didn't know which yet. "He's hitting us everywhere at once," Isabel said, spreading maps and reports across Rafe's desk. "And it's coordinated, professional. Someone's feeding him intelligence." "A mole," Rafe said quietly. "Has to be. Someone close enough to know our movements, our weak spots." Isabel's expression was grim. "Boss, we need to pull back, consolidate. Figure out who's leaking before we make another move." "No," Rafe said. "We go on the offensive, now. Hit Santiago's operations twice as hard. I want him to feel pressure from every angle." "That's exactly what he wants," Isabel argued. "He's baiting you, making you react emotionally instead of strategically. And it's working because you're distracted by—" "Finish that sentence carefully," Rafe warned, his voice dropping to ice. Isabel held his gaze. "By the waitress and her kid. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm saying it's dangerous. You've never been compromised before. Never let personal feelings cloud your judgment. And now Santiago knows it. He's using them against you." "Then I'll make him regret it," Rafe said. But Isabel's words haunted him long after she left. Was he compromised? Had caring about Lila made him weak? The betrayal came from the person Rafe least expected, Vincent. The cafe manager he'd trusted for 3 years. The man who'd run Sunrise Cafe efficiently and loyally, who'd never given Rafe a reason to doubt him. Isabel discovered it by accident, a money transfer, small enough to avoid immediate detection, from one of Santiago's shell companies to Vincent's offshore account. $50,000, Isabel said, showing Rafe the bank records. Deposited 2 weeks ago, right before the inspectors showed up at the cafe. Rafe's hands curled into fists on his desk. Vincent sold me out. And he's been feeding Santiago information ever since, Isabel confirmed. He knows about the safe house, about Lila and Cameron, everything. Rafe's blood ran cold. Where is he now? Still at the cafe? Doesn't know we've made him? Rafe stood, his expression carved from granite. Get the car. We're going to have a conversation. 20 minutes later, Rafe walked into Sunrise Cafe through the back entrance. Vincent was in the office counting the day's receipts. He looked up when Rafe entered, his expression shifting from surprise to poorly concealed fear. Mr. Moreno, I didn't expect $50,000, Rafe said quietly, closing the door behind him. That's what Santiago paid you. I'm curious, was it worth it? Vincent's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Rafe moved faster than Vincent could react, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the wall. Don't lie to me. I've got the bank records, the transfers, the phone logs. You've been feeding him information for weeks. He threatened my family, Vincent gasped. My wife, my kids. He said he'd kill them if I didn't cooperate. Rafe's grip loosened slightly. So, you sold out mine instead? I'm sorry, Vincent choked out. I'm so sorry. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, Rafe said coldly. You could have come to me. I would have protected your family. Instead, you put a target on a woman and a 5-year-old boy who did nothing to you, who never hurt anyone. Vincent's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know he'd go after them. I swear. He just wanted information about your operations, your movements, and you gave him everything, Rafe finished, including the location of the safe house. Vincent's silence was confirmation enough. Rafe released him, stepping back. You have one chance to fix this, Rafe said. You're going to call Santiago right now. You're going to tell him I've moved Lila and Cameron, give him a fake location, and then you're going to disappear, take your family, and get as far from San Antonio as possible. If I ever see you again, I won't be this merciful. Thank you, Vincent whispered. Thank you. Don't thank me, Rafe interrupted. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because your kids don't deserve to pay for your mistakes. Now make the call. Vincent made the call, his hands shaking, feeding Santiago a location on the opposite side of the city. After he left, escorted by 2 of Rafe's men, who would ensure he actually left town, Isabel turned to Rafe. You know Santiago won't fall for it, right? He'll send people to verify, and when he realizes it's fake, he'll know we're on to Vincent. He'll accelerate his plans. I know, Rafe said. That's what I'm counting on. Let him make his move. When he does, we'll be ready. And Lila and Cameron? Move them, Rafe said immediately. Tonight. Different house. Tighter security. No one outside you and me knows the location. Isabel nodded, but her expression said what they were both thinking. It was only a matter of time before Santiago found them anyway. That night, Lila was packing Cameron's things, confused by the sudden instruction to move again, when Rafe arrived at the safe house personally. He looked exhausted, dangerous, like a man carrying the weight of impossible choices. What's happening? Lila asked. Santiago knows where you are, Rafe said bluntly. We're moving you somewhere safer, now. Cameron, half asleep on the couch, perked up when he heard Rafe's voice. Mr. Rafe, you came! Rafe's expression softened instantly. He walked over and knelt beside the boy. Hey, buddy, sorry it's so late. Are you coming with us to the new house? Cameron asked hopefully. Rafe glanced at Lila, then back at Cameron. Just for tonight, to make sure you get there safe. Good, Cameron said, wrapping his small arms around Rafe's neck. I like when you're here. You make Mama smile. Rafe's throat tightened. Over Cameron's shoulder, he met Lila's eyes. She was watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read, fear and hope and something else tangled together. Let's go, Rafe said quietly. The new safe house was even more remote, a ranch property an hour outside the city, surrounded by open land that made surveillance easy and approach difficult. Rafe personally checked every room, every window, every sight line before allowing Lila and Cameron inside. You'll be safe here, he said. I've got men posted at every access point. No one gets within a mile without us knowing. How long? Lila asked. How long do we have to live like this? Until Santiago is handled. And what does handled mean? Lila's voice was sharp. Are you going to kill him? Rafe was silent. Oh my God, Lila whispered. You are. You're going to kill him. He threatened you, Rafe said quietly. He threatened Cameron. There's no negotiation with men like Santiago. No middle ground. Either I end him or he ends us. Those are the only two options. There has to be another way. There isn't, Rafe said firmly. This is my world, Lila. This is how it works. I'm sorry you got pulled into it. But now that you're here, I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect you, even if that means doing things you can't forgive me for. Lila stared at him, tears streaming down her face. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. I didn't ask for any of this. I know, Rafe said, and if I could go back and change it, keep my distance, leave you alone, I would. But I can't. So now all I can do is finish what I started. He turned to leave. Rafe, Lila called out. He stopped. Don't die, she said softly. Whatever you're about to do, don't die. Cameron, her voice broke. Cameron needs you. He's gotten attached. And She couldn't finish. Rafe looked back at her, something vulnerable flickering across his face. I'll come back, he promised. I always do. Then he was gone, and Lila was left standing in a strange house, holding her sleeping son, wondering if she'd just said goodbye to the man who'd saved her life, or the man who'd destroy it. Santiago Vega made his move 48 hours later, not with guns blazing and armies clashing. That wasn't his style. Santiago was a snake, and snakes struck from hiding. The call came at 3 a.m. Rafe's phone buzzed on his nightstand, pulling him from the 2 hours of sleep he had managed. The number was blocked, but he knew immediately who it was. Moreno? Santiago's voice oozed through the speaker like oil. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. What do you want? Rafe's voice was cold, controlled. I want to make a deal, Santiago said. You and me, face to face. No guns, no soldiers, just two businessmen having a conversation. Why would I agree to that? Because if you don't, Santiago said, his tone shifting to something darker. I'm going to stop playing games. Your waitress, the kid, I know you move them. I know you're protecting them. But Moreno, you can't watch them every second of every day. Sooner or later, there will be a gap, a mistake. And when that happens, if you touch them, Rafe interrupted, his voice dropping to lethal quiet. There won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in. Santiago laughed. See, that's the thing. I don't want to touch them. That's messy. Bad for business. I'd rather we settle this like professionals. You meet me. We negotiate terms. Maybe we both walk away with something. What terms? You step back from 3 of your territories, East Side operations, the port contracts, and the downtown distribution. Hand them over to me. In exchange, I leave your little family alone. Hell, I'll even throw in a guarantee. No one touches the cafe, the waitress, the kid, ever. They're off limits. It was a trap. Rafe knew it was a trap, but he also knew Santiago was right. He couldn't protect Lila and Cameron forever, not while fighting a war on multiple fronts. Where and when? Rafe asked. Tomorrow night, midnight, the old textile factory on the south side. You know the one. Come alone, Moreno. Just you and me. If I see your people anywhere near that building, the deal's off and the woman becomes a widow before she ever gets a ring. The line went dead. Isabel was against it from the moment Rafe told her. It's suicide, she said flatly. He's going to kill you the second you walk in that building. Maybe, Rafe said. But if I don't go, he'll keep escalating. He'll keep hunting Lila and Cameron until he finds an opening. I can't live like that. They can't live like that. So your solution is to sacrifice yourself? Isabel's voice rose with frustration. Boss, think about this. If you die, who protects them? Who keeps Santiago from doing exactly what he threatened? You will, Rafe said simply. I've already updated my will. If anything happens to me, everything goes into a trust. Lila and Cameron are provided for, protected, and you... He met her eyes. You become executor. You make sure they're safe, that they get out of San Antonio and start over somewhere Santiago can't reach them. This is insane, Isabel whispered. This is necessary, Rafe corrected. I brought this into their lives. Now I'm going to end it. But he knew Isabel was right. Santiago wasn't interested in negotiation. This meeting was an execution waiting to happen. Rafe didn't tell Lila about the meeting. He visited the ranch that afternoon, bringing groceries and a new tablet for Cameron loaded with educational games. He watched the boy play in the backyard, laughing at something Lila said, completely oblivious to the danger circling their lives. "You seem different today," Lila observed, sitting beside Rafe on the porch steps. "Quiet, even for you." "Just tired," Rafe said. "Liar." Lila studied his profile. "What's happening? What aren't you telling me?" Rafe was silent for a long moment. Then, "If something happened to me, if I wasn't around anymore, would you be okay?" Lila's breath caught. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one." "No," Lila said firmly. "I wouldn't be okay, and neither would Cameron. So, whatever you're planning, whatever stupid, heroic, self-sacrificing thing is going through your head right now, don't. We need you alive, Rafe, not martyred." "I'm not a hero, Lila," Rafe said quietly. "I'm a criminal, a man who's hurt people, destroyed lives. Whatever happens to me, I probably deserve it." "Stop," Lila said, her voice breaking. "Stop talking like that." She grabbed his hand, the first time she'd voluntarily touched him, and held it tight. "You saved us," she whispered. "You gave us hope when we had none. You made Cameron smile again, made me believe that good people still existed in this world." Tears streamed down her face. "So no, you're not perfect. Yes, you've made mistakes, but you're also the man who heard me whisper a prayer and decided to answer it. That makes you worth saving too." Rafe looked at their joined hands, then at her face, and felt something break open in his chest. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Okay. I'm meeting Santiago tonight, alone. It's probably a trap. I might not come back." Lila's grip on his hand tightened to the point of pain. "Then don't go. If I don't, he'll never stop hunting you." "Let him!" Lila's voice rose desperately. "We'll run. We'll disappear. We'll—" "That's not living, Lila. That's just surviving. And I didn't save you from one kind of survival just to trap you in another." Rafe stood, pulling her up with him. "I'm ending this. Tonight, one way or another." "You can't—" Rafe kissed her. It was desperate, fierce, full of everything he'd never said. All the feelings he'd buried under duty and guilt, and the belief that men like him didn't deserve good things. When he pulled back, Lila's eyes were wide with shock. "If I don't come back," Rafe said quietly, "Isabel will take care of everything. You and Cameron will be safe, provided for, free." "I don't want your money," Lila whispered. "I want you." Those 4 words nearly broke his resolve, but Rafe stepped back, releasing her hand. "Take care of Cameron. Tell him—" His voice cracked. "Tell him I'm sorry I couldn't stay." Then he walked away, ignoring Lila's pleas, ignoring the sound of her crying, ignoring every instinct screaming at him to stay. Because loving her meant protecting her, even if it killed him. Midnight found Rafe standing outside the old textile factory, alone as promised. The building was a skeleton, rusted metal, broken windows, graffiti covering every surface. The perfect place for men to die and bodies to disappear. Rafe walked inside, his footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. Santiago stood in the center of the factory floor, illuminated by a single hanging work light. He was alone, visibly at least, but Rafe's instincts screamed that they weren't really alone. There were guns pointed at him from the shadows, at least 6, maybe more. "Moreno," Santiago said, smiling. "I'm impressed. I didn't think you'd actually come." "Let's get this over with," Rafe said. "You want 3 territories. Fine, take them. In exchange, you leave Lila Martinez and her son alone, forever. No retaliation, no games. They're civilians. They stay that way." Santiago's smile widened. "See, that's the thing. I don't actually want your territories." Rafe went still. "Then what do you want?" "I want you dead," Santiago said simply. "I want your empire, all of it, your connections, your operations, your reputation. And the easiest way to get that? Remove you from the equation." He snapped his fingers. Armed men emerged from the shadows, 8 of them, weapons raised, surrounding Rafe in a circle. "The waitress was bait," Santiago continued. "The whole thing was bait. I knew if I threatened someone you cared about, you'd do exactly this. Walk into a trap trying to be noble. And now, here we are." Rafe's expression didn't change. "You made a mistake." "Really? Because from where I'm standing, you're the one surrounded." No, Rafe said calmly. You're the one who assumed I'd come alone. Santiago's smile faltered. What? The lights went out. Gunfire erupted in the darkness, muzzle flashes like lightning, the sound deafening in the enclosed space, shouting, screaming, chaos. When the lights came back on 60 seconds later, Santiago's men were on the ground, dead or disarmed, and Rafe stood in the center of the room, gun drawn, surrounded by his own team, who'd been waiting in the rafters, in the side rooms, in positions Santiago never checked. Isabel stepped out of the shadows, weapon trained on Santiago's head. You talk too much, she said. Santiago was on his knees, hands raised, all bravado gone. Moreno, wait, we can make a deal. No deals, Rafe said coldly. He walked forward until he was standing directly in front of Santiago. You threatened a woman and a child. You made this personal. Now you pay the price. Please. Rafe pulled the trigger. The sound echoed through the factory, then faded into silence. It was over. Santiago Vega was dead, and Rafe had won. But the victory felt hollow. Dawn was breaking when Rafe returned to the ranch. He was exhausted, blood-spattered, carrying the weight of another life taken, another piece of his soul sacrificed. But he'd promised to come back. Lila was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red from crying. When she saw him, she stood slowly, as if afraid he was a ghost. You came back, she whispered. I promised, Rafe said. Lila ran to him, crashing into his chest, holding him so tight it hurt. Don't ever do that again, she sobbed. Don't ever make me think I lost you. Rafe wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her hair. I won't. It's over. Santiago's dead. You're safe. Cameron's safe. And you? Lila pulled back, searching his face. Are you safe? I don't know, Rafe admitted. This world, my world, it's always dangerous, always complicated. And you deserve better than... Lila kissed him, cutting off his words. When she pulled back, her eyes were fierce. I get to decide what I deserve, and I choose you. Complicated, dangerous, imperfect. I choose you. Rafe stared at her. Something like hope blooming in his chest for the first time in years. 6 months later, Sunrise Cafe looked different. The worn booths had been replaced with comfortable seating. The cracked tiles gleamed with new flooring. Fresh paint covered the walls. Warm yellows and soft oranges that made the space feel like actual sunrise. And behind the counter, a chalkboard menu listed not just coffee and burgers, but a full breakfast menu, fresh-baked pastries, and a kids section with prices that made the meals accessible to everyone. Lila stood at the espresso machine, steam rising around her as she crafted a latte with the kind of precision she'd learned over the past months. She wore a different uniform now, not the threadbare polo from before, but a crisp black apron embroidered with her name and a new title, manager. Cameron sat at his usual corner table, but now he had proper homework instead of coloring books, and a tutor, a college student. Rafe had hired, helping him with reading 3 times a week. The boy was thriving, growing, smiling in a way that made Lila's heart ache with gratitude. Life had changed. Everything had changed. The bell above the door chimed. Lila looked up and smiled, the real smile, the one that reached her eyes, when she saw Rafe walk in. He no longer wore baseball caps and faded jeans to blend in. Today he wore a tailored suit, but his tie was loosened, his expression soft in a way it never was anywhere else. This cafe had become his refuge, the one place where Rafael Moreno, the name that made grown men nervous, could just be Rafe. The usual? Lila asked, already reaching for a cup. Always, Rafe said, sliding into a booth. Cameron spotted him immediately. Rafe, did you bring it? Rafe pulled a book from his jacket, a new addition to the illustrated series Cameron was obsessed with. As promised. The boy ran over, grabbing the book with reverence. Thank you. Can you read it with me later? After dinner, Rafe said. Deal? Deal! It had become their routine. Dinner at Lila's apartment 3 nights a week. Homework help. Bedtime stories. The strange, beautiful construction of a family built from broken pieces. Lila brought Rafe his coffee and slid into the booth across from him, a luxury she could afford now that she had staff to cover the floor. Busy day? She asked. The usual, Rafe said, which meant meetings with lawyers and accountants, decisions about legitimate businesses, and the careful management of operations he'd been slowly transitioning away from. Isabel was handling more of the shadow empire now, while Rafe focused on building something cleaner, legal, something Cameron could be proud of someday. It was slow work, dangerous work. Men didn't just walk away from the life Rafe had lived, but for the first time, he wanted to try. "I got a call from the community center today," Lila said. "They want to partner with us, use the cafe as a location for their after-school program, free meals for kids who need them." Rafe studied her. "What did you tell them?" "I said I'd talk to the owner," Lila said, her eyes sparkling. "So, what do you think, owner?" "I think," Rafe said slowly, "that sounds exactly like something we should do." Lila reached across the table and took his hand. 6 months ago, she would have been terrified to touch him. Now it was natural, easy. "Right. Thank you," she said quietly, "for all of this, for believing I could do more than just survive." "You were always capable of more," Rafe said. "I just gave you the space to prove it." That evening, after the cafe closed and Cameron finished his homework, the three of them sat in Lila's small apartment, the same one she'd nearly been evicted from a year ago. But now it felt different, secure, home. Cameron was nestled between them on the couch, the new book open in his lap, Rafe reading aloud with dramatic voices that made the boy giggle. Lila watched them, this dangerous man who'd killed to protect them, now making silly voices for a children's book, and felt her heart expand with something she'd stopped believing in years ago. Love, not the desperate, clinging kind born from need, but the steady, certain kind built on trust and choice and showing up day after day. After Cameron fell asleep, Rafe carried him to bed while Lila cleaned up the kitchen. When he returned, she was standing at the sink, staring out the window at the city lights. "What are you thinking about?" Rafe asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "That a year ago, I was returning milk at a grocery store, whispering prayers just to make it through the day," Lila said. "And now I'm standing in my own kitchen, watching the man I love put my son to bed, and I almost can't remember what that desperation felt like." Rafe tensed. "The man you love?" Lila turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. "Yes, the man I love. Is that a problem?" "No," Rafe said, his voice rough with emotion. "It's the best thing I've ever heard." He kissed her, slow, tender, full of promises he'd never made to anyone before. When they pulled apart, Lila rested her forehead against his. "I know your world is complicated. I know there are still dangers, still things you can't tell me about. But Rafe, I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," Rafe repeated, like he was testing the word, learning its shape. "Together," Lila confirmed. "You, me, and Cameron, a family." Rafe had spent his entire life building walls, protecting himself, trusting no one. But here, in this small apartment that smelled like coffee and childhood, he finally let those walls crumble. 3 months after that, Rafe proposed, not with a grand gesture or public spectacle. That wasn't who they were. Instead, it was a quiet Sunday morning in the cafe before opening, Cameron drawing at a table while Lila prepped for the day. Rafe walked up behind her, placed a small velvet box on the counter, and said simply, "Marry me." Lila stared at the box, her hands covered in flour from the pastries she'd been making. "What?" "Marry me," Rafe repeated. "Make this official. Make us a real family." "We're already a real family," Lila said, her voice shaking. "Then make it legal," Rafe said. "Give Cameron my name. Give me the right to protect you both, not just as someone who cares, but as someone who belongs to you." Lila opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Elegant, understated, perfect. Not the flashy kind a cartel boss might buy to prove wealth, but the kind a man chose when he actually understood the woman he loved. "Yes," Lila whispered. "Yes, of course yes." Cameron looked up from his drawing. "What are you guys talking about?" Lila and Rafe looked at each other, then at the boy who'd become the center of both their worlds. "How would you feel?" Rafe asked, kneeling down to Cameron's level. "About me becoming your dad? Officially?" Cameron's eyes went wide. "Really? Like, for real?" "For real," Rafe confirmed. Cameron launched himself at Rafe, wrapping small arms around his neck. "I've been wishing for that since forever." Lila watched them, tears streaming down her face, thinking about the prayer she used to whisper. Please, just survive. She'd stopped whispering it months ago, because now she wasn't just surviving. She was living. Epilogue. 2 years later, Sunrise Cafe had expanded into 3 locations across San Antonio. Each one employed people who needed second chances, former addicts, ex-convicts, single parents struggling to make ends meet. Each one partnered with community organizations to provide free meals, job training, and support services. And each one had a small plaque by the door that read, "Everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves to be seen. This is a place where survival becomes living." Lila ran the operations with the same fierce determination she'd once used just to get through the day. But now that determination built something instead of just holding things together. Rafe had transitioned almost entirely out of his old life. There were still shadows, there always would be, but he'd built enough legitimate success that the illegal empire was fading into memory. Isabel had taken over what remained, managing it with efficiency while Rafe focused on his family, and Cameron, now 7 years old, officially Cameron Moreno, thrived in ways neither parent could have imagined. He was bright, kind, confident, a kid who'd never have to whisper survival prayers because his parents made sure he always had enough. One Saturday morning, the 3 of them stood outside the newest cafe location, a space in the neighborhood where Lila had grown up, where she'd learned what poverty felt like. Cameron held the ceremonial scissors, ready to cut the ribbon. "This one's special," Lila said, squeezing Rafe's hand. "This is where I used to walk past restaurants, pressing my face against the windows, wishing I could afford to eat inside. And now you own the restaurant," Rafe said quietly. "And kids like you used to be can eat here for free. Because of you," Lila said. "Because you heard 3 words and decided they mattered." Rafe pulled her close, kissing her temple. "Those 3 words changed my life too. They reminded me that I'm not just what I've done. I'm also what I choose to do next." Cameron tugged on both their hands. "Can I cut it now?" "Go ahead, buddy," Rafe said. The boy cut the ribbon with dramatic flair, and the small crowd gathered outside applauded. As customers filed into the new cafe, families, workers, people who looked exactly like Lila once had, she thought about the journey that brought them here. A cartel boss who'd gone undercover in his own cafe. A single mom who'd whispered desperate prayers just to survive. 3 words that stopped a man in his tracks. Please, just survive. And now, standing in the sunshine with her husband and son, Lila whispered 3 different words. 3 words that felt like victory, like hope, like home. We made it. If this story touched your soul, don't just leave. Subscribe and join our community that believes in second chances, in the power of seeing people when they're invisible, and in love that transforms lives. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories that prove redemption is real, and that 3 words can change everything. Drop a if you believe everyone deserves to be seen, and share this with someone who needs to know that survival can become living. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that broken people can build beautiful things. We'll see you in the next story.